Happy Migraine Awareness Month, everyone. We have been talking to so many interesting people who run their own small businesses. It's a pretty logical thing to do when you have a disorder like migraine that's a bit variable because you're your own boss and you can't be fired. But they're great little businesses. Today we're talking to Kiana Jones, who runs her own makeup business. Is that correct?
Yeah, I do like the prosthetic special effects kind of side of makeup rather than the beauty side. I like making people look horrifying.
All right, tell us how you got into that.
I guess I was always artistic and I was studying art at university when I got into it. And I loved costume parties and trying to find like good costumes. And then eventually I got invited to a zombie bar crawl. And then obviously
Mhm,
like the main part of that is probably the makeup. I mean, like
mhm.
costume is all in terms of blood and rips or whatever, but like the makeup's a big part of making yourself look like a zombie. So then I started looking at how to put like latex on my face and make fake wounds and put fake blood on and everything like that. And then I didn't even like horror movies at the time, or I couldn't. I've always been like a fainter around blood. I couldn't look at like reference images. I was never like into that scene. But then
Mm.
just through that, I found an affinity for doing fake wounds and blood and zombies and gross things. Yeah, it's kind of a weird. A
Okay.
lot of people start liking horror movies or start. Yeah, I just fell into it by accident.
Okay, so what kind of things do you work on? Do you work on movies or do you work on, I don't know, dress up shows or like
Yeah,
parties or a bit of
movies
everything?
are probably the main thing. I also I started like on YouTube and I like teaching
Yeah.
people how to do stuff, and I do well before COVID I was doing like in-person workshops of like a day or two on how to make prosthetics or sculpt or apply or whatever. And most recently I've been focusing mostly on filming how to do prosthetics and teaching people online.
Hmm.
I think the last movie I worked on was Mortal Kombat, but only like a couple of days of like a applying prosthetics and looking after actors on set and things. I kind of like the workshop work more where you're sculpting or taking life casts or molding or painting rather than like the on-set stuff, but it's kind of fun to do a mix of both. And
Hmm.
then if there's not work for me in that area, I kind of do my own work at home. So I'll make my own prosthetics to sell or make videos teaching people how to do it. And at the moment, I've got like an odd job, which is new, but like kind of connected, doing risk response simulation aids for the New South Wales Fire Department.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's like a
Very cool.
swollen finger for practicing ring removal and like a compound fracture to wrap around a dummy, and then like some faces, silicon faces to put on their dummies that are like a little bit in pain kind of thing. So yeah, just kind of some random things. Last year I made some really long arms for a dancer. I get kind of random odd jobs as well.
I bet you didn't think you'd be doing this in high school.
No, probably not. I think in high school I wanted to be an actor, but I guess it's like the same industry, just like the flip side of it. Being the crew instead of the cast.
Why not? It works. I mean, it sounds like you enjoy it quite a lot, which is
Yeah.
good. To migraine, like, when did it start for you?
Well, because I have like a big family history of migraines, and I think my sister is the only one that didn't really get them. And my dad,
Mm.
he'd have like the real strong painkillers and muscle relaxants like in the cupboard ready to go. Both my brothers have the proper migraine medication and did used to take codeine when it was like easier to get. That might still get with a
Mm.
prescription, I'm not sure. And I mine was worse as a teenager. I'm sure like hormones had something to do with that. I don't get the ones of aura that often, maybe once a year, once every 2 years. And the last two times
Mm.
they've been from doing an intense exercise class after being really lazy for a while. And about half an hour later, I lose vision. Um, so yeah, in terms of like the really bad one with aura, they were more frequent, a lot more frequent when I was a teenager, like late teenage years. Um,
Mm.
it would be different every time as well. Like one of them was working at the cinema answering phone calls about movies, and I started speaking gibberish, like the wrong words were coming out of my mouth, and I was like, "Ooh, I'm having a stroke." And then like the lights started, and it's like,
Mm.
okay, migraine. And I think that was because I was in a really hot car on the way to work with no air conditioning, like shortly before that, and then like power vomiting in the bin in the staff room, and my mum having to come pick me up. Probably the weirdest one, I think late teens or early 20s at my mum's house, and I was on a computer and the light was like hitting through the window at a certain way that was like it must have triggered something because it just felt weird. And I looked down at my left arm And I was like, that's not my arm. That shouldn't be attached to my body. And I was like, that's real weird. And when I was like, Mom, this isn't my arm. It shouldn't be attached to my body. And she's like what? And then I started seeing like, maybe that one's like more zigzags, I think, rather than spots. And I was like, oh my God. And then that one was like, my arm kept going numb on my left side, or like just like icy cold stabbing pain. It was like real left arm centric, as well as like all the other migraine symptoms. Those were the weirdest ones. Most recent ones have just been the losing vision. So a year ago, I went to a pole dancing class. I'd never been to one before, and it's actually quite a lot of effort and hanging upside down and all of that stuff. And I left full of endorphins, feeling really good. And then it was in New Zealand, so I was in like a foreign country, like in a city where I didn't know anybody, and I was walking in like Wellington CBD, and I started just having like black dots of my vision just like disappear until like I couldn't see very well. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going blind in a city where like I don't know anybody and I can't get help. And I looked at Google Maps for a nearby pharmacy. I was just gonna like head to a pharmacy and see what they can do. And I got there and I was like, really sorry, like I just panicking because I'm getting a migraine and like I'm losing my vision. And they offered something which I hadn't tried before. I think it's like a New Zealand one. I tried finding it here, but it was called Migradol, and it was like literally magnesium and B2. And they're like, you can take this and eat some food, and you can lie down in a vaccination room if you want. I was like, thank you. So I took the magnesium and I laid with my legs up against the wall because I felt like my brain wasn't getting enough blood, and maybe putting my legs up would like help that or something. Because I go into shock sometimes as well, and that's like a lack of blood to the brain thing too. And or like I faint, I'm a fainter. So I was like, put my legs up and take this magnesium. And like weirdly enough, like my vision came back within 10, 15 minutes. And then I was like waiting for the headache to hit. And it was like an hour later and like 2 hours later. And I was like, this is so weird that it actually like got rid of it. Like, what the hell? And then maybe like 3 hours later, I started getting like a little bit of inklings of starting of that kind of migraine headache. So I went home and like had a bath and took some painkillers and like took it easy. And it was like just moderate, like it never turned into like a full-blown thing. So that was like super weird. So now I'm trying to take magnesium and B vitamins more often just in case there's like something in that. Yeah. But I think more frequently now it's like tension headaches, like the most frequently. And sometimes I can just take a Panadol and it goes away. But then I had one on Monday. It's kind of like not knowing exactly where it's going to end. And so sometimes you take a Panadol, it goes away. And on Monday it ended up being like 3 Panadols, 2 Nurophens, magnesium, CBD, a bath, a heat pack, a massage, stretching, and I couldn't get rid of this headache. And it was just like there the whole day anyway. Or sometimes it ends up going into having nausea, light sensitivity, like not being able to be functional at all, but like no aura. So, and my migraines are never like just one-sided. It always kind of, not that I'm aware of anyway, it just always kind of feels, so I don't really have like a differential between full-blown migraine versus tension headache unless I get the aura. Yeah, I'm still not sure like when I get the nausea and light sensitivity and a bad headache if that's like a proper migraine or not, but I get that more often than like the aura. But the auras are like
it's migraine.
The worst part. Yeah. The auras are the part where
I mean, it's like anything that's kind of involving light sensitivity, noise sensitivity, whatever, then just put that in the migraine basket.
Yeah.
Over here.
Yeah. The pain isn't too bad, and you can sleep it off versus like the ones with aura, like where you feel like you're dying. That's like next level,
So does it affect your work at all, or are you able to work around it?
No, it does affect my work, and because I have hypermobile joints as well, and I think when I'm sculpting or running prosthetics or doing makeup, I can very easily be in a very bad posture because I'm really concentrating on what I'm doing. And if I get a lot of tension in my neck from a bad posture for a long amount of time, like that can really mess things up. And so there's a period this year with like maybe like a month, it was like headaches or like going into like the nausea territory and stuff as well, and light sensitivity like 5 times a week maybe. Like it was like really bad. I wasn't functioning very well, and yeah, I couldn't get stuff done. And I ended up like, for me, I think the most helpful thing in the past has been seeing a physiotherapist, especially if I feel like it is caused by that, because obviously sometimes it's exercise or heat or like just random, but if it is feeling like it's caused by really bad posture and hypermobility, and you can like press the points in the neck and it all like comes over really intensely and you're like, okay, that it's that. Then the physio, I mean, part of it is the release, but part of it's getting exercises to like stretch out these muscles and pull the shoulders back and pull my neck into alignment and try and work on strengthening the muscles to hold the joints in place so I can't slouch, like really insanely slouch more than most people should be able to do. And there was a period where I was doing these exercises, these posture correction exercises consistently when I was in my mid-20s. I had no headaches and I had no migraines for like months. Like it fixed so many issues. But then I was like, cool, I'm done now. And I stopped going. And then it came back. And I'm really bad at consistently exercising, even though I know it helps so much. I just find it so boring and so hard to motivate myself that my version right now is before bed, I'll do like 15 to 30 minutes of exercising. There's some like, you know, weights and things, but usually just like my body weight. So like a big one now is putting my feet like this and putting my hands behind my neck and just like putting like for 10 seconds like pressure backwards rather than just the chin tuck to try and, you know, and trying to pull my shoulders back and like really try and feel, you know, just like really kind of simple at home ones rather than the full gym thing. And even that seems to help reduce the frequency. But yeah, I know if I was really good at doing all the posture correction stuff, and as well as like I'm sure it helps with cardio health and, you know, because a lot of it's the blood vessels and it constricting or constricting or dilating too much. Thinking of vasodilation, I said violating and just like shortened it. Yeah, I'm sure like in general, like if I took care of my body more, I would in general, like everything would probably get better, right? And it's really hard to motivate myself to do it still. So I have like a lazy version that I'm doing right now. And it is helping. Like I've definitely reduced the amount of headaches and everything recently with that. And yeah, and luckily I haven't had the auras as much. And my parents are in their 60s and like as they got older, like no migraines anymore. Like with them, it seems to have disappeared with age as well. So like fingers crossed, like as I get older, the frequency just keeps like diminishing. But yeah, I know if I have really shit posture for a long time, it doesn't matter. Like I will get like a headache.
But it's good to know that. Like it's good to know that if it's your posture, that's kind of your main trigger. That you know what it is and you know how to fix it.
Yeah.
Staying committed to actually do it is a whole different conversation, right?
Yeah.
And I think most of us in the migraine community know that and have been there. For me, it's diet, right? If I have a really strict diet, then I am usually okay.
Yeah.
And I just like my food too much. You know, I just kind of work on the theory of, you know, do a little bit, do what you can. And then, you know, if you know you're going to stuff it up, well, take an antihistamine beforehand and just write it out. It's fine.
Yeah.
Making that progress to know what your main trigger is and what you can do to deal with it, particularly when that thing is not a drug, is always a good thing. You know, I mean, I don't know. Have you tried much in the way of medication?
So, I mean, like we had a family catch up. I was like 2 months ago. My uncle was talking about how he had gotten migraines a lot, and he was taking like the specific migraine medication that you have to take during the aura phase, or else it doesn't like work as well. And I was kind of like, oh, is that like the one you take it during your aura? He's like, no, like I don't get auras. I was like, oh, like what, like so when do you take it? He goes, oh, I take it when I start to like my vision gets affected. And I was like, that's an aura, like you idiot, like what the hell, like he just didn't even understand. Like, and he's like in his 60s and he's had it's like that's what the aura is, like what? But so he was having success with that. And I mean, I was just like actually Googling now, like on the subreddit about migraines, what people kind of take and what they do. And it does seem like a few people do start off with a headache and then they're kind of going, is this going to turn into a migraine or not? Should I take the medication? I'm like, I don't think everybody does have the aura right away or have to take medication during the aura phase. And so I've written myself a note being like, chat to your doctor about actual migraine meds. Maybe you don't have to have an aura beforehand to be able to find one that helps, you know, because it's sometimes like, I mean, my trick is just to take like 2 Panadol and 2 Nurofen, just double up like as high as possible, and hopefully that will help. Or sometimes even if I just submerge my whole head in a bathtub of hot water, like really, really hot water, that will kind of help. But a lot of the time when I get out, it comes back anyway. And then I just have like wet hair that I have to deal with while like lying on the bed and like not wanting to blow dry it. But like sometimes like random things will help and sometimes they don't. So, and I tried codeine once for a migraine. or bad headache. I can't remember at the time. It was like bad enough that nothing was working. It was a long time ago now, but it's a bit blurry memory. My brother was like, yeah, try some codeine. And it didn't get rid of my pain at all. And then I also felt like I was floating, and I was like freaking out because like I
Okay.
don't feel like weird.
No more
Yeah.
codeine for you.
Yeah. So I was like, no codeine for me in terms of like, yeah, stronger painkillers. But yeah, in terms of the ones that then aren't like painkillers but kind of help with the blood flow and everything, I'm like, I'll maybe make a note and chat to my doctor about it more, to be like, the ones that aren't the aura and you're not sure how bad it's going to get, or you know, or if other
Yeah.
painkillers haven't worked at all, like is there something in that I can explore more. I've kind of been at a disadvantage with my parents because they're like hippies and they're really not into like Western medicine, and they kind of raised us to be like, don't take any medication. And so a big part of me internalized that. So it's like, oh, I'll just take my magnesium then because that's fine. And like this weird like medicine aversion, even though I know it can help. And so as an adult, I'm trying to get better at being like, drugs aren't scary, like they can help. It's okay to like ask for them and try them out and see what happens. So try not.
We have quite a lot of people come into the Migraine Australia chat group and they're like, no, I want to do this without drugs. And quite a lot of us giggle because when you go through the migraine journey, if you get really bad, like most of us do, kind of, you know, particularly women in the 30s kind of get really, really bad, really, really fast. You can't manage this beast without drugs, and the drugs are good. But definitely talk to your doctor about triptans, because I think that might help you. If they're helping your brothers, they'll probably help you. And the other thing you should try is, instead of Panadol and Nurofen, which is fine, right? Paracetamol generally doesn't do much for migraine, but it can help if you've got a bit of a tension headache thing going on.
It's like in between. I'm like, I don't know, we'll just throw something at it and see what happens.
But next time, try a big dose of aspirin, 900 milligrams of aspirin.
Okay, I've never really taken aspirin, so that's interesting.
No, because people think of it as an old school drug, and you know, it's something that Nana takes.
Yes,
it works. We don't know why. We don't really understand what's going on. But 900 milligrams of aspirin, which is a big dose of aspirin, right? You don't need fancy aspirin. You don't need dissolvable aspirin. You can go to the supermarket and get the packet for 95 cents. Take 3 of those tablets. Boom. Follow it with a coffee and see how you go. That's what we call an aspirin bomb.
Yeah, because we have got well, you know, you can get the combination of like, it's usually paracetamol though, but like with caffeine, there is like a combination that has like the paracetamol caffeine. But it's interesting to hear that paracetamol might not work as well for migraines, but that's the one that tends to get paired with caffeine the most.
Yeah. So when you take the one that's combined with caffeine, it kind of works, but it's mostly the caffeine that's doing the work. Which is kind of, you know, it's about understanding what's actually going on. So caffeine is a proven drug to treat migraine, which I know is bizarre because it's also a trigger for a lot of people, but you will soon learn, those of you who are new to migraine world, that everything is a treatment and a trigger. It's just the fun of migraine. Yay. But you will tend to find too that if the aspirin bomb works, and it doesn't work for everybody, but if it does, you don't tend to need follow-up doses like you do with Nurofen or Panadol.
And it's not a kind of tolerance level as well. If you take lots of Panadol and Nurofen, adding aspirin, which is a different drug, might also kind of be like a no tolerance there, so it would work really well, at least initially. I'm assuming, like if I take too much Nurofen, I'll go to like Panadol, and if Panadol feels stronger, sometimes Panadol doesn't feel like it works, so I go to Nurofen, and then I just started like combining them and kind of fucking up that theory, but just taking them both just in case one will work and one doesn't. Yeah, the aspirin will be good. I'll definitely try that.
All right, give it a shot. All right, so what would be your tip for people who are perhaps like you at the lower end of the migraine spectrum? And we do love, you know, kind of representing you guys and talking to those of you who are not as disabled as the board of Migraine Australia by their migraine. What would you recommend for them to thrive with migraine like you do?
Yeah, I mean, I guess a lot of it is a journey, and like everything is different for everybody in terms of what triggers and what helps. And for me, I have a pretty bad memory, so I try and write stuff down, or else I'll kind of forget exactly. I mean, even in terms of trying to think about the last time I had an aura migraine, like was it on both sides of my head, or just like I'm ripping on one side? But if you kind of write all that stuff down, I think that would really help in the future to kind of keep track of things. I did get Migraine Buddy on my phone as well to try and keep track of if things that I don't pay attention to, like temperature drops or barometer, or like, you know, the humidity or any of that kind of stuff is a trigger without knowing it, or what food or what exercise. I mean, obviously, some things are really clear. I did a really intense exercise class to go to migraine. Tuesday, I did a really intense exercise class to go to migraine. Or like some things are really trackable, but other things aren't. So Migraine Buddy, I mean, even the fact that Migraine Buddy can like track your sleep, and I was noticing interrupted sleep would give me a headache the next day most of the time as well, where I wouldn't have probably put that together or noticed it. So you can get apps to track that for you as well and not have to like have just notes on your phone. I feel like I can't give advice because I don't follow my own advice or like actually try and take care of my body, but like you do try and take care of your body just to, you know, in general. Like I think the healthier that you are and is the better for like any kind of mental illness or physical illness. Like if you eat well and exercise and try and have a good posture and try and sleep well, like usually it eliminates things. But I don't even understand these people that can do that though. Like who is even capable of doing that every single day? That's my goal, but I'm not that person at all. But you know, I have noticed like a big correlation with how well I sleep and my posture and my exercise with it. I haven't paid attention to diet, but it's also probably because I'm a big sugar addict and I wouldn't never give up sugar, even if I found that it was like causing me to have like the worst life possible. I don't think I could give up sugar. So that's like my one vice. Sorry, I tend to blind eye to that. But yeah, I think just trying to be aware and keep
don't give up sugar.
Yeah.
Don't give up sugar. No.
So
I mean, there are people around who'll say, oh, I gave up sugar and then I didn't have any more migraine attacks. Right. But one of the really important things to understand is that your migraine brain mid-attack is chewing through sugar faster than a normal migraine brain. You need to feed it.
Yeah.
So it's one of the reasons why sugar-free, low carb, keto, and fasting diets are not recommended for people with migraine.
Yeah.
But there are lots of other things you can change, right?
Yeah, that's interesting.
There are certainly people that are around that say, no, I went sugar-free and I'm fine. Look, if it works for you, it works for you. But there's diets like the Heal Your Headache diet. I'm personally a fan of the elimination diet and actually working through that process to figure out what food triggers you've got and then make your own diet from there. And that's what I don't follow, right? I know I shouldn't have tuna, but I love tuna. I love salmon. I really love sushi.
Yeah.
So it's kind of,
Yeah.
oh well.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like
you gotta live.
Usually I love doing research into things and learning about it. And I realized that like with the migraines and then now with just like sometimes a headache, sometimes it turns into something worse and I don't really know, like just roll the dice and see what happens with it, whatever you want to call that in between. Like it's not like it's full on as a full migraine, but it's not like functional. But I I usually like doing research and like talking to doctors and trying to work out what happens. But I honestly did get discouraged by my brother being like, I went to the doctor and they don't do anything, they can't help. And my friend Alyssa was encouraging me to go see a neurologist when it was happening like all the time, like for like a month. And I was kind of thinking about it, but getting scared of like the MRI machine and stuff because I'm a claustrophobic person. And I don't know, I for whatever reason, like that's the one area of my life where I haven't done a lot of research or sought a lot of help and just kind of go, I'll just deal with it when it happens. And like I guess like the physio helps. Like I know that side of it, and that's like in general, like trying to work on posture, I guess, to try and stop headaches. That's the main reason, and migraines. But like I just, for whatever reason, I haven't really done a whole lot of research into migraines or sought help for it, and have been discouraged from seeking help for it. So it's really interesting talking to you now and being like, you know, I'm 32, like maybe I should have like earlier tried to find things that would help with this rather than just kind of go like, I don't know, like I'll just deal with it when it happens, and being kind of
look,
like,
you're very normal, right? Most of the people don't land anywhere near Migraine Australia until they're completely debilitated.
Yeah.
And of course, we've only been around for 18 months. So it's not like, you could have known about us a couple of years ago. The information is there. We're here to support you no matter where you are in your migraine journey. And it's totally okay to, not feel guilty. Don't feel guilty about the fact that you didn't do something about it earlier. Because it's part of our need as people at the sharper end of the migraine spectrum to talk to people like yourself and say, get it under control, hard and fast. Because if you get it under control fast, and if you figure it out early, then you can try and avoid chronic migraine hell. And that's, all we want for you is to not be as disabled as we are. Please stay healthy, and do it with a smile and a laugh, just as you are, and you'll be fine.
Side note, I just thought something else I learned about migraines. unintentionally. I was learning about like PTSD. There's a book called like the Body Keeps the Score, which is like pretty popular.
Yep.
PTSD, yeah. And migraines come up so often in that, and I was just like thinking about that. And weirdly, like when I was listening to the book, and I'm like an emotional person, so like was trying like like not cry, but I cry very easily. And even just talking about the book now, my eyes are like welling up because it's like really full on, right? Listening to it. And listening to like these stories of everything that happens to people, like I would physically like have to stop listening to it because it was like so fun. I could feel myself getting emotional, but like weirdly, like I would leave and I would feel like so much tension at my shoulders and more frequent, like really bad headaches and like less ability to like sleep. And it's kind of like, it's really interesting that connection between like mind and body, and like realizing that when I feel like a bit kind of triggered by those kinds of stories and things, because like I didn't have the best childhood, and like my psychologist said that I do have like a like PTSD around childhood stuff, and trying to learn about that and how that impacts the body. Like that's so fascinating, just to even just sit and listen to it, feel a bit triggered or too much, have to turn off and just feel that in my body and feel the resulting like tension and like headaches and everything that comes from that. And because so many of my siblings also suffer from migraines, I'm like trying to share that side of it with them as well, and be like, you should also go see a psychologist and deal with that, because it could be an emotional connection and they have like the digestive problems as well, and like the chronic back pain and the migraines, and like one of them has like asthma, which is like part of it as well. Like all these kind of things they list as like chronic, like unexplained things that can happen in the body, being linked back to kind of unprocessed like traumatic things. Like that's a really fascinating like area of it as well. And I think that there is definitely
It
like
is a really fascinating area. And even I can see just as you started to think about it, your shoulders went up and locked.
Yeah.
Right. And I have PTSD too, right? So I get it and I understand. And one of the things that has been really liberating for me, to understand and kind of give myself permission and forgive myself a little bit, is to understand that migraine is a genetic condition that was always there.
Yeah.
And then all of this other stuff makes it worse.
Yes.
And one of the things that has been particularly enlightening for me is understanding what the migraine brain is, right? That it's a hyperreactive brain.
Yeah.
And therefore it tends to overreact to trauma in the way that it collects everything, it stores those memories. And the ability of this hyperreactive brain to be re-triggered, which is what PTSD is, is so much higher, right? So the rates of PTSD amongst people with migraine is much, much higher than the rest of the population. And it's something that we do need to talk about. It is PTSD Awareness Day at the end of the month, because it is really important that we talk about it. There's a lot of people in the group that are dealing with PTSD, either from childhood issues or abusive relationships, or, the more kind of classic PTSD presentations of people that have served in war, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of different presentations, but understanding that part of the reason you have this PTSD reaction is because you have a migraine brain really kind of helps you get control over what can otherwise be something that you struggle to control. I found that anyway, understanding it as part of and linked to migraine, and the fact that I have a migraine brain is part of the reason why I can't get rid of this PTSD. Has been really empowering for me in terms of not having the guilt and the anxiety of I did something wrong, or there's something wrong with me. There isn't. I've just got a migraine brain.
Because with the is the words that you use like it's like more sensitive, is that the correct?
So it's technically it's called hyperreactive because
hyperreactive.
So when the brain gets a stimulation, the migraine brain overreacts. So hypersensitive is equally kind of appropriate, I suppose. But essentially if you go right back to, the kind of guts of what we understand is going on, and there's still a lot of science going on in this place, this may be completely out of date in 3 years' time. But migraine is caused by a defect on the genes that relate to how the ions get processed in the brain, right? So ions are effectively salts, and they get carried around the brains through ion channels. And if you have migraine, essentially what happens is one of the 44 genes that they've found, or a combination thereof, has been altered in your genes so that those ions go faster through your channels than they do through a neurotypical brain. So essentially what happens is your brain works faster all the time than somebody else that doesn't have migraine.
Yeah.
But because it works faster, it means that when it gets an instruction and when it starts sending, instructions around different parts of the brain, is that they go faster and they tend to overload.
Whoa. Yeah, that's
And that's kind of when you understand that, and you understand that that's actually going on in all of those processes in your brain, then of course you get PTSD more easily than somebody who doesn't have a migraine brain. Like,
yeah,
of course, right? The number of chemical interactions and responses to trauma that goes on in the brain, of course the body's going to remember that, and your migraine brain's going to overreact the second it thinks that's coming again. Like, that makes perfect sense. And it's so liberating for me to understand it that way. It may not be for others, but that's my thing.
Yeah, I got diagnosed with ADHD at the end of last year at like 31, and that's like a fast brain thing as well. And I'm wondering if there's any kind of connections between ADHD or like other kinds of neurodiversities and migraines, because that would be interesting if it's all kind of like stuff happening.
Lots more research required in this space. Absolutely. I've had a hunch for a long time that a lot of the kids are getting diagnosed with ADHD and drugged as kids, right? Which seems to be far too common, like way too common. And a lot of these kids don't seem to actually match ADHD kind of behaviors, but they're pretty classic migraine behaviors. Yeah. So it's I mean, I think we do need a lot more in both kind of physical symptoms and what's actually going on in the brain, because the other kind of connection that I see all the time that makes me nervous is the migraine, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome link. A lot of common symptoms, all unknown kind of stuff. And it's kind of, like, I've spoken to people that have, often self-diagnosed themselves with fibromyalgia and then gone off to a doctor to get it confirmed. And even though they're presenting and describing kind of pretty classic migraine symptoms, because headache is not a big issue for them, they dismiss it and they go, no, it's all fibro. And it's kind of,
that's fascinating. I'm definitely gonna like Google more of this afterwards, just to kind of like ADHD migraines and like migraines and fibromyalgia, and just like I just like want to. This is like my brain just like wants to know everything about this now. This is so fascinating.
Yeah, that's a migraine brain. All right. Thank you so much for making the time to talk to us during Migraine Awareness Month. We better wrap this up. We'll just talk all day.
Talk forever. Thank you so much. This is so interesting. And I'm definitely trying to aspirin tip too. Thank you for that.
Great, Kiana. Have a great and happy Migraine Awareness Month.
Thank you. You too.